I cannot believe one of the best displays of fear in modern movies is in an animated film for family. Puss in Boots 2022, the adventure comedy spin-off from the SHREK universe.
Pray for mercy from Puss!
The sequel to the 2011 Puss in Boots movie. You guys can check out the review that I did on that on my channel, and that movie in and of itself was a gem. But this one really blew that one even out of the water. I mean, I think it's fair to say each of those movies are in a class of its own. But Puss in Boots, it really wowed me in so many ways. But the way I'm going to be talking about in this video that it wowed me is in the way it did the villain.
What's the matter? Lives flashing before your eyes?
And there were multiple villains. There were halfway anti-heroes, there were mild villains, or sort of really bad villains, and then there's one villain in particular that everyone probably knows who I'm talking about. And that is the one we're going to talk about. For the longest while, villains were too one-dimensional.
What the fuck? Oh yeah.
And they made them multi-layered. And some of the multi-layered villains we get, for examples, are Thanos.
Titan was like most planets. Too many mouths, not enough to go around. And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman.
The reason why Thanos was so loved by everyone and people were hyping him up is because he was one of the only modern-day villains for the time who felt as though he was more than just a twirling mustache character. He had a conviction to the detrimental of a lot of people, but it made sense.
And what I predicted came to pass. With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist, and I call that mercy.
And the reason why he was so fearsome was because of how much sense it made, but because of how much he was convicted and willing to go to the lengths that he did to see that come about. So let's talk about some examples. To understand why a villain is good, let's look at the good examples that we have. I have 2 right now off the top of my head. So Thanos, he was relentless in his quest to obtain the Infinity Stones. He never wavered from his mission even in the face of near certain death. That makes him scary. The fact that he is willing to even lay down his life for his conviction, come what may. He was also a strategic thinker, carefully planning ahead and making calculated moves. Every time you thought you were one step ahead of him, he came up in the rear or right in front of you, like what happened with Wanda and Vision. Thanos' actions were motivated by some misguided sense of justice and a desire to restore balance to the universe. And when you hear him explain it, saying that his planet became desolate because there were too many people for the resources, and so that more people could live and not suffer, it made sense to balance out or basically cull the population because he saw the destruction of what happened when people were overpopulated on his own planet.
This universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. Your planet was on the brink of collapse. I'm the one who stopped that. You know what's happened since then? Children born have known nothing but full bellies and clear skies. It's a paradise.
He sounds like someone who had lost people that he loved. He also was a powerful physical and mental adversary, able to take on the Avengers and other powerful foes with ease. Anybody who went up against him, it was not easy to do so. His character was complex and multidimensional with his own set of moral codes and beliefs, and nothing you say could convince him otherwise. The sympathetic backstory that I gave you about losing all the people on this planet because of that horrible situation with the overpopulation and mismanagement, that made him sympathetic as well, or made us sympathetic towards him, so it was kind of hard to just hate him as a villain. You can have a villain that's good that you just hate outright, but then you have a villain that makes you feel conflicted, and it makes you think more about them because you don't know whether or not you should hate him, or like him, or what. Then there was the Joker.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the neck. See?
one of my favorite villains in the Dark Knight movie, played by Heath Ledger. Joker's unpredictable and chaotic nature made him a formidable and terrifying opponent for Batman. The character was portrayed as a psychological and physical threat to both Batman and Gotham City. I mean, Batman really had his whole spiel cut out for him going up against the Joker and really made him work. Joker's backstory and motivation were left open to interpretation, and that added to mystique for his character. And that's a lot of what I find more modern villains are missing. Now they're trying to make them too layered to the point where there's nothing mystical about them. It's also the reason why creepypastas that leave open endings about what people experienced or had a run-in with, or where the characters all die, are my favorite, because it still has this air of this thing could still be out there and we have no idea what it is. Not to mention, Joker had this sadistic sense of humor, which added a unique and disturbing element to his character. When Batman threatened him with death or to hurt him, Joker just laughed. There was nothing Batman could do to him to make Heath Ledger's Joker give up the ghost. He only did things to his rules and his games, and the rules are, there are no rules. I'm just crazy. A man that is crazy and has nothing to lose is very terrifying. It was terrifying and very frustrating when Batman was trying to essentially beat him to a pulp to torture him, and nothing that Batman could do to him would make Heath Ledger's Joker comply. Not to mention, Heath Ledger, rest in peace, gave a critically acclaimed performance. He added a certain amount of nuance to the character. He really gave it his all to bring this character to life, so that helped sell the character. And the character's impact on the story, and its themes of morality, justice, and power, made for a compelling and thought-provoking narrative. Those two examples, Thanos and Joker from The Dark Knight, are what you called nuanced, multi-layered, multifaceted villains. And that works. It's a perfect balance between mystical, convicted evil, and also understanding what it is they stand for. Most importantly, the villain is soul, and we can tell it's a good villain by the impact it has on the character, or how it makes the character feel, how we see their behavior transform or change or be altered or affecting their actions. That is how we know the villain is a good villain. The fact that they are able to mold the character or get a rise out of the character. And we see this in Puss. Whenever Wolf Lobo is around, Puss has goosebumps. His hair stands up. You can hear his heart beating. He starts to hyperventilate.
What? What?
There are several scenes throughout this movie where Puss looks like he is in fear, like we've never seen him afraid. And the fact that our hero that we love so much is terrified. He is seeing his blood. There's a sense of the sense of mortality. And we also get that because Puss has been living a life of a legend, just being unafraid and totally brave. And we can't even say he's brave because he knew he had lives to spare. Now that in this movie, it's not spoiled already, he's down to one life. Every time there's a threat of death or fear, Lobo manifests. And you can see how his presence directly affects Puss. And you feel sorry for the character, but it also helps to make the character relatable.
What's wrong?
A good villain can make a good hero, and that's why it's important to have a good balance of both. What also adds to the mystique of Lobo is now that we know that he's death, he likes fear. All of this is a game to him, and at the end of the movie, he walks away. Puss didn't really defeat him. The thing is, Lobo's gonna get Puss anyway. At some point in time, Lobo's going to win. He's going to be back. There's going to be a time when Puss is very afraid. He's probably going to appreciate his life now, and that was a good moral lesson, but it still adds to the mystique of this creature that can seemingly teleport anywhere and feeds off fear. He was really giving me some Freddy Krueger vibes in this movie. I love this character. I think he's one of the best things about this movie. This movie was awesome, but all the characters came together to make it a great ensemble, and that's why people are praising it. There are relatable moments, there's emotional moments, there's fear, there's excitement, there's comedy. I mean, when I talk about adventure, when I say the word adventure, I don't use it lightly. Some people say, oh, it's an adventure, and then they show you something like freaking Disney Plus's Willow, the show. Not even gonna go there. If you guys want to know what I'm talking about with Willow, you can join in on the full-length adventure, episode by episode, and get some good laughs, hear me get frustrated, and cuss, and be super angry for no freaking reason because of how bad that show is. Go check it out here. I might make a separate playlist just for that so you guys can have at that. But that is an example of how not to do an adventure. Here, in Puss in Boots' Last Wish, everything comes together so beautifully, and it also ties in with the SHREK stories, and which makes me believe that Dreamworks, Universal, they're doing this whole MCU thing. Or I don't like to say MCU because MCU is kind of failing at that, but they are doing a universe which works because there is an endless pool of content to drag from.
Where are we headed anyways?
Off to find new adventures and to see some old friends.
And I forgot that that content is just out there. Disney did a lot of them, but the stories don't actually belong to Disney. And it was funny because you saw the movie use a lot of elements of that from the Disney stuff because they weren't Disney, and it's like it was a big F you in Disney's face. That's hilarious. But I love this movie. I love the villain. They did an excellent job with it, and that is how you introduce a villain. That's how you make something fearful. There are elements in this movie about this character that made my heart start racing. And I wish that modern day movies that claim to be horror or that claim to have fear actually do this and let the character still be mystical enough for you to fear it. There's not always a way for you to beat the character. Even though Puss technically beat the character, he didn't really beat the character. He was able to win the fight and keep living, but the character's still alive, and the character is still very much a present danger that will always loom over Puss because he only has that one life, which makes it even more valuable to spend with his friends. Anyways, that's just my very crappy amateur assessment. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.